Great. Let's unpack this. We are diving into a disease that is, well, it's serious, and it has this remarkable ability to just fly under the radar until the consequences are severe. Osteoporosis, they call it the silent disease for a reason. So our mission today is pretty simple. We need to break that silence. We're going to look at the real scope of this condition, figure out who's most at risk, and how it actually shows up in some surprising ways way before a fracture happens. And most importantly, what can you actually do about it? What are the tools, conventional medicine, lifestyle changes that are available right now?
Yeah, and the need to pay attention is it's really urgent. This is a huge public health issue, and it's growing. I mean,
Yeah.
just look at Spain, for example. Cases went from about 2.8 million back in 2000 up to 3.5 million by 2017.
Mhm.
But what's really sobering is the severity when something does happen.
That's usually the fracture, isn't it? The first big sign.
Exactly. A hip fracture, often the first thing someone really notices, carries a risk of up to 20% mortality
20%. Wow.
within the first year alone. And that's often due to associated complications, infections, being immobile. And for postmenopausal women, these fractures can mean losing, on average, about 3.5 years of life expectancy. It's life-altering, sometimes life-ending.
Okay, that definitely puts into perspective why we need to act early. Let's get into the biology a bit. We know osteoporosis means weaker bones, but what's actually being lost? Because you mentioned it's not just calcium.
Right, that's a really key distinction. If it's only calcium loss, that's a different condition called osteomalacia. Osteoporosis is, well, it's more comprehensive. It's the loss of the entire rigid structure. That means the whole mix of minerals that makes bone hard. So yeah, calcium, but also magnesium, phosphorus, zinc, silicon. You lose the total mineral package that holds it all together.
And we have to remember bone isn't like a rock, right? It's living tissue.
Precisely. It's constantly in flux, always balancing formation and destruction. Think of it like a construction site. You've got osteoblasts building new bone and osteoclasts clearing out the old or damaged bits. It's a continuous process. Now, for most of us, we hit our peak bone density somewhere between 25 and 30 years old. That's when formation is really winning. That strong structure generally holds steady until maybe age 40. Then the balance starts to tip a little. And after 50, bone destruction in the osteoclasts really starts to outpace formation. That leads to that gradual thinning we associate with aging.
So who's the typical person dealing with this kind of imbalance?
Well, naturally, it affects older people more, particularly those of Caucasian or Asian descent, and women are hit much harder, up to 4 times more often than men.
4 times.
Yes. Also, people who just start out with a smaller frame, less initial bone mass banked, they're at higher risk from the get-go. And like with so many things, family history definitely plays a role.
Okay, but here's where I think it gets really interesting. Beyond age and genetics, there are these powerful non-age-related causes that maybe people don't think about as much. Things related to how our bodies handle nutrients.
Absolutely. We're talking about systemic issues here, like poor intestinal absorption. That could be from, say, gastric surgery or chronic conditions like Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. If you can't absorb the minerals properly, you just can't build strong bone.
And it's not just absorption, it's also about keeping what you've got, right? What about kidneys?
Exactly. If the kidneys are damaged, maybe from chronic diseases like diabetes, they can't reabsorb calcium effectively. So that essential mineral just gets flushed out in the urine instead of being kept in the body.
And some medications actually make that worse.
They certainly can. Excessive use of corticosteroids, for instance, is a well-known risk factor. Those drugs hinder calcium absorption and promote its elimination by the kidneys. It's a double whammy.
But the one that really surprised me in the source material was the link to excessive antibiotic use. How does that connect to my bones?
Yeah, it's a fascinating, if slightly disturbing chain reaction.
Yeah.
So lots of antibiotics can really mess with your gut microbiota, the healthy bacteria you need. And here's the bone link. The microbiota actually synthesizes vitamin K.
Okay.
And vitamin K is absolutely crucial for bone formation. It activates proteins that bind calcium into the bone matrix. So if you disrupt your gut health long-term, you disrupt your vitamin K supply, and that makes it fundamentally harder for your skeleton to build and repair itself.
Wow, that really changes how you think about gut health. It's not just digestion, it's structural. Now, focusing on women again, that acceleration postmenopause sounds dramatic. Just how big is the hormonal effect?
Oh, it's the single biggest accelerator.
Yeah.
That sharp drop in estrogen and progesterone levels during menopause just throws the whole system out of balance. Before menopause, the rates of osteoporosis are pretty similar between men and women. But afterwards, it's a completely different story. A man might lose, say, 3% of his bone density over 10 years.
Okay.
A postmenopausal woman can lose that same 3% in just 1 year.
1 year, goodness.
Yes. It makes those years immediately following menopause an absolutely critical window for taking action.
Right, so hormones are a huge factor, maybe not entirely controllable. What about something we can control more, like diet? You mentioned our body's internal pH balance. How does that fight hurt our bones?
This is so fundamental to understanding how bone loss can happen, even if you think you're eating okay. Basically, your body will do almost anything to keep your blood pH neutral. It's a top priority. Now, if your diet is causing metabolic acidosis, meaning it's heavy on processed foods, sugars, refined flours, too much red meat, sodas, your body kind of goes into panic mode to neutralize those acids.
And how does it neutralize them? What does it use?
It uses your bones. Think of your skeleton as an emergency alkaline reserve, specifically calcium phosphate salts. When the internal acid alarm goes off, the quickest way for the body to restore balance is to dissolve those basic salts right out of your bone structure. It's called buffering.
So it's stealing from the bone bank.
Pretty much. It's sacrificing long-term structural integrity just to keep your blood chemistry stable right now. And over time, that leads directly to bone erosion.
That is. Yeah, a horrifying trade-off. So given this is the silent disease, how does it actually start to show up before that big fracture happens? What are the subtle signs?
Well, often they're things we just dismiss as, getting older. One of the first can be a loss of stature, actually getting shorter.
Right.
Tiny microfractures happen in the spine vertebrae. They compress slightly, and over time that adds up. You literally shrink. Another classic sign is that increased forward curve in the upper back, what people sometimes call a dowager's hump or kyphosis. That happens because the front part of the vertebrae collapses or flattens more than the back, forcing that stooped posture. And finally, just pay attention to vague, sort of diffuse bone pain, a feeling of heaviness or discomfort, especially in the lower back. It's not sharp there.
But we can't really rely on noticing we're shrinking or feeling vague pain. There's a diagnostic tool, right?
Yeah.
Densitometry. How does that work?
Yes, densitometry is key. It's basically an imaging technique, like a special X-ray, that measures your bone mineral density. It's crucial for early diagnosis. The official diagnosis of osteoporosis comes when your bone density measures at NACADA 2.5 standard deviations, or SD, compared to a healthy young adult, say around 30.
Okay. NACADA 2.5 SD. Can you put that in perspective? Like, what does that mean practically?
Think of it like your bone density credit score. 0 SD is like having perfect credit. Hitting NACADA 2.5 SD is like getting a major alert. You're officially in a structural danger zone. But the number you really want to watch for is the one before that. If your results are between NACADA 1.0 and NACADA 2.5 SD, that's called osteopenia.
Osteopenia. So that's the warning stage.
Exactly. That's the precursor. Getting an osteopenia diagnosis is your flashing yellow light. It's the time to really double down on prevention before you cross that critical osteoporosis threshold.
Okay, let's talk about the medical side. Conventional treatments. They mainly try to stop the destruction, right? What are the common options and what are the catches?
The most common class of drugs are the bisphosphonates. And they are very effective at inhibiting those osteoclasts, the cells that break down bone.
Sounds good so far.
It does. But there's a significant downside. They don't just inhibit the bone-destroying cells, they also tend to inhibit the bone-forming cells, the osteoblasts. So while you're stopping destruction, you're also hindering the bone's natural ability to repair the tiny microfractures that occur all the time. That can be a problem long-term.
And the side effects need careful consideration. Things like nausea, flu-like symptoms are common, but there's also a rare but serious risk of osteonecrosis of the jaw, basically, destruction of the jawbone.
Oof.
Yeah. So their use really needs to be cautious and usually limited in duration. There are other drugs, too, like denosumab, which uses antibodies in a slightly different way to block the osteoclasts.
What about hormone replacement therapy for women? Is that still common? Well, HRT is still an option, especially if a woman has severe menopausal symptoms along with bone loss concerns. But its use has become much more restricted, really targeted to specific situations now, because of the increased risks identified in the studies, things like breast cancer, blood clots, cardiovascular issues.
Right. So given those complexities with the drugs, it sounds like the lifestyle approach becomes even more critical. You mentioned 3 pillars: diet, physical activity, and stress management, starting around age 40. Let's touch on stress first. People might not connect that directly to bones.
Yeah, the stress connection is huge. Chronic stress leads to the release of adrenal hormones, especially cortisol. And cortisol acts a lot like those corticosteroid drugs we just talked about. It hinders calcium absorption and encourages your kidneys to get rid of calcium.
So being stressed is like constantly running an anti-bone campaign inside your body.
Essentially, yes, you're actively making it harder to absorb calcium and easier to lose it. So managing stress isn't just good for your mind, it's crucial for your skeleton.
Okay, let's pivot to diet. This is where the big surprise seemed to be the calcium paradox. The ideal is a natural, varied diet, maybe organic, avoiding those acidifying foods, alcohol, tobacco, standard stuff. But let's talk about cow's milk. It's been pushed as the bone builder for decades.
And this is where we really need to unpack the details. The evidence suggests that industrial cow's milk is actually quite problematic for bone health for two main reasons. First, absorption. Yes, milk is high in calcium on paper, but our ability to absorb that calcium efficiently from cow's milk is surprisingly poor. And that excess, unabsorbed calcium has to go somewhere. It can end up deposited in joints, contributing to arthritis or in blood vessels or forming kidney stones or gallstones.
So, poor absorption, plus it can cause calcification in the wrong places. What's the second problem?
The second problem goes right back to that acidosis issue we discussed. Industrial cow's milk is actually one of the most acid-forming foods in the typical Western diet.
Really? More than meat or soda?
It's right up there. So when you drink a lot of it, your body becomes more acidic. And what does it do? It triggers that emergency response. It pulls calcium salts out of your bones to buffer that acid.
So drinking milk could actually lead to losing bone calcium.
Paradoxically, yes. According to this mechanism, the body prioritizes neutralizing the acid from the milk over keeping the calcium in the bone. The conclusion is pretty stark. If you want strong bones, avoiding industrial cow's milk seems advisable.
That is genuinely going to blow some minds. So if milk is out, or at least questionable, where do we get good bioavailable calcium?
Oh, nature provides plenty. The absolute most calcium-rich food group on the planet is algae. Things like wakame, kombu. Beyond that, look at sesame seeds. Tahini, for example. Sesame seeds can have up to 10 times more easily absorbable calcium than milk.
10 times, okay.
Then you have nuts that actually help alkalize the body. Like almonds, they fight that acidosis. And don't forget legumes, chickpeas, lentils, beans are great sources. Lots of vegetables, especially leafy greens. And fatty fish like sardines and salmon, especially if you eat the small, soft bones. Plenty of options.
All right, let's quickly cover supplements too, because you mentioned bone structure is more complex than just calcium.
Exactly. Orthomolecular nutrition or targeted supplementation can be really helpful. Of course, you need the basic minerals. Calcium, the citrate form, is generally better absorbed, and magnesium is crucial too. They work together. But then we need to think about the bone structure, its flexibility.
Ah, right, the elasticity factor you talked about?
That comes down to copper and silicon. These are essential for synthesizing collagen. Think of collagen as the rebar inside the concrete of the bone. It provides that flexible strength, the resilience to impact that prevents fractures. Silicon, in particular, is key for both building that collagen matrix and making sure the calcium and phosphorus deposit correctly within it.
And what about the vitamin D and K connection you mentioned?
Vitally important. Vitamin D3 is essential for absorbing calcium from your gut. Sunshine is the best source, but supplementation is often needed. However, if you supplement G3, it's really best practice now to take it along with vitamin K, specifically K2. Vitamin K acts like a traffic cop, directing the calcium into the bones and teeth and helping to keep it out of arteries and soft tissues where you don't want it.
Okay, D with K makes sense. Any others?
Vitamin C is also crucial for collagen synthesis. The B vitamins are involved in bone formation and hormone regulation. And omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids help with calcium absorption, kidney reabsorption, and collagen building. Interestingly, for postmenopausal women, having slightly more omega-6 might help with hormonal balance.
Okay, last pillar, but definitely not least, exercise. You said it's mandatory for bone health. Is just walking or slimming enough if I'm worried?
It's good for general health, but for stimulating bone density, no, it's not enough. You absolutely must include force or strength exercises, resistance training, lifting weights.
And why is that so critical? What's the mechanism?
It's pure mechanical signaling. Two main things happen. First, when you lift weights or resist force, it puts stress on your bones. That stress sends a direct signal to the bone cells. Hey, we need to be stronger. This activates mineralization and makes the bone matrix denser and tougher. Bones literally respond to load.
Okay, direct signal. What's the second mechanism?
Second, strength training builds the muscles around the bones. Stronger muscles act like shock absorbers and a protective scaffolding for your skeleton. They improve balance, reduce the risk of falls, and lessen the impact on the bone if you do fall. So the recommendation is definitely to incorporate multi-joint exercises, things that work large muscle groups like squats, lunges, push-ups, rows. Start with body weight if you need to, then gradually add resistance. It's one of the best investments you can make in your future structural health.
Right. We've really covered a lot today. We've mapped out how this silent disease operates, from that shifting balance of bone building and breakdown, the huge role of hormones, and critically, how lifestyle choices managing stress, avoiding those acidifying foods, can either protect or undermine your skeleton.
Absolutely. And the key takeaway, I think, is that prevention and early detection are powerful. We have the tools, from densitometry scans to simple, effective lifestyle changes. The real goal should be to start implementing these pillars: the right diet, the right exercise, managing stress, ideally starting around age 40, well before osteoporosis has a chance to take hold silently.
Okay, and now for that final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over. You might genuinely believe you're doing everything right for your bones, maybe diligently consuming calcium-rich products every day. But if industrial cow's milk is a major part of that strategy, consider this. You might actually be triggering an internal chemical reaction that forces your body to raid the calcium already stored in your skeleton just to deal with the acidity that milk creates. So the question to ask yourself is, are your daily habits truly building long-term bone density? Or could they, paradoxically, be forcing your body to prioritize short-term chemical balance over the very structural integrity of your own bones? Something to think about.